This is Sena Bonbon, your resident DIYer. And today we're going to talk about mushrooms. Hi! What are mushrooms, fungus, and mycology? Mycology is known as the study of mushrooms. Mushrooms are the reproductive structure produced by some fungi, i.e., you're eating its pepinos. When you think about it, it makes sense because how does a mushroom spread its seed except by coming up out of the ground and releasing its spores? Mushrooms are quite literally all about the circle of life. Like, you know, Lion King. It is essentially most mushrooms in any given forest or ecosystem have a wide network. So if you see some sprouting up in one area and then in another area, they could potentially be still part of the same organism. It's cool. Mushrooms are in fact the fruit of the fungus, and the fungus is what is all throughout the forest floor. Their job is to break down dead and decaying things, whether it be, trees or leaves or sometimes even animals. They provide the nutrients after the fact to whatever is growing there. There's certain types of fungi, when they have a fungal infection on something, that can actually provide benefits to things in the forest, and it connects trees through tiny threads called mycelium. So mycelium connects all these trees. It's really, 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 really cool. Yeah. Mushrooms can take many forms, and most commonly, the most common types of mushrooms you will ever see is a toadstool. Sometimes they do take really interesting forms. One of the most interesting forms I've ever seen are going to be stinkhorns. Stinkhorns always have really interesting shapes. I believe they still have a stem, but it's not a traditional cap. Look at that. Isn't that cool? And stinkhorns are called that because they usually have some sort of nasty goo growing inside it to decompose things. But of course, something decomposing in goo is going to stink. Some other stinkhorns release like actual spores out, and the gas itself smells sulfuric, which is why they're called stinkhorns. And then some of them literally smell like death, because what are they doing but, feasting on decay. There's going to be edible, inedible, and medicinal. I have a list for you of the 10 most popular edible mushrooms. The number one most common edible mushroom that you will ever find is a button, a white button, which is technically a portobello. Next would be a cremini, which is known as an Italian brown, which is just the white button in a different state. Sometimes they're called baby bellas or baby portobellos, or the brown mushroom or the Italian mushroom. They are technically more complex in flavor than a white mushroom, and I think they have a bit of a more meaty quality to them. And then portobellos, they're just the bigger version of a brown button or a white button. Next is the shiitakes. They're dried. You can have them dried and boil them and then get them rehydrated, and they still imbue the same flavor. The next one is going to be oysters. That's number 5. I've had oysters. They're also really meaty in flavor. Porcinis. I've never gotten to have porcinis. And morels. I've had morels. They're really good. The texture's a little weird, but they're really good. And then the enokis. That's probably my favorite flavor-wise. Wrap it in some bacon, cook it up real good. And then chanterelles. I've had chanterelles dried and then rehydrated, but I've never had them fresh. And I feel like if I had them fresh, they'd be amazing. And then last is maitakes, which is also super good. King oyster mushrooms are really good. Trumpets are also really good. If you cut them up right, you can get them to taste almost like seafood-ish. There's a couple on my list that I want to try, like lobster's mushroom and hen of the woods, and
3 weeks later.
Those are the most common, most popular mushrooms. And then there's obviously the toxic mushrooms. You got the California agaricus, death cap, the inky mushroom, the felt ring, the yellow staining mushroom, the American abrupt bulbed lepidella, sunshine amanita, chlorine lepidella, false death cap, poker's amanita, booted amanita, European amanita. It's a lot of amanitas. Amanitas are just by and large a no-go. The fly agaric, also known as the Amanita muscara, it's this red and white dotted one. They're generally toxic. to even use it for medicinal purposes, you have to cook it at a very specific temperature, dehydrate it at a very specific even temperature the whole time. And it's just too much of a risk. Then you got the royal fly agaric, the false blusher, green spored parasol. So a lot of them are ones that are like Amanita adjacent. I can tell you there's also a jack-o'-lantern mushroom that what people sometimes confuse for a chanterelle, and they get like really, really bad, like full-on diarrhea afterwards. But some of these are like deathly. But a lot of these, like, you wouldn't eat. A lot of them are pretty easy to tell. The jack-o'-lantern mushrooms very much don't look like chanterelles, to be honest. Chanterelles look very different. They're a much more vibrant yellow. And if you see one in this color range, usually if it even is a chanterelle, it's out of season. You don't want it anyways. There is this type of like mushrooms that I really like, but you can't eat them. They're called ramarias. They have multiple different kinds. Here it is. It's like little hands. Isn't that cool? It's like they're all reaching up like, ah! Like the forest floor is trying to grab you as you walk by. There's one that's like a red and pink color, and it's a like common name is beautiful clavaria, but they're all like inedible. Lastly is the medicinal. There's the reishi or the reishi, and a lot of people put that into a powder into teas, and it's part of like Eastern medicine. And then lion's mane as well. Places like Whole Foods sells them in like little capsules as pills to take. But lion's mane, and some of them have potential health benefits. The research is not there. Gee, I wonder why Big Pharma wouldn't want to research something natural. But yeah. So there's reishi and lion's mane. These are the two I know to be like the most common for like quote unquote medicinal stuff. And then there's the other stuff.